$5 Games presents Long Live the Queen. First impressions of the game was that this was going to be a dating sim. And then, America, My Country 'Tis of Thee started playing on the title screen. Yep. I no longer knew what I was getting myself into. The story is about a young girl whose mother died, unfortunately, and now she is next in line for the throne. The objective is to make her survive and make her queen by the end. So it's a choose-your-own-adventure kind of game. The catch is that just because you choose an option doesn't mean that the protagonist is able to do it. Let me explain a little. First thing they throw at you is a huge stat screen that makes it extremely daunting to proceed any further. The stats don't mean the same thing though as they do in all of the other games out there. Basically, there are events throughout the game that the main character can only do if there is enough of that particular stat. Unfortunately, there is nothing to say how much of the stat the protagonist needs, but it does inform you which stat the protagonist epically failed at. So when starting off in the game, you're going to be greeted with nothing but messages that said, you failed to do this and you failed to do that. It really puts you in the main protagonist's shoes of being depressed and having a parent with high expectations. That's her father, not her mother. Her mother's dead, like I said. There are context clues in the story for some of these events. For me though, even when I guessed which stat I needed correctly, I usually needed to increase that stat well before the context clue was even given. To increase a stat, you have to choose which classes the protagonist takes. They take 2 a day, week, whatever the time frame is. And the classes are a 1-to-1 ratio with their corresponding stat. However, just because you take a class doesn't mean that the main protagonist wants to learn. See, how well they learn a particular subject is affected by their mood. For instance, if the protagonist is angry, then they can learn archery really well and can increase that stat twice as much in one class period. Their mood can be influenced through the story and how you choose for them to spend their idle time, which is after the classes. Sadly, most of the idle time options end up having them feel more depressed or alone. I was really trying to choose an option to make her more of a chipper kind of warlord person, but in the end that ended up getting her killed. Because although I had enough of the archery stat, I didn't have enough reflexes, and she didn't react fast enough to bandits. See, the game is kind of diabolical in that regard. It keeps telling you that you're failing at this or failing at that, but if you pursue those things, then you're no longer committed into the things that you were originally studying in, which makes you fall short on those things as well, and makes it so that you just end up dead. For instance, one time I tried focusing on magic, and then I thought, hey, I have enough magic now, it's about 80% full. Like maxed out, let's try acting like a queen now. And I end up dying because I didn't have enough magic. I am really not happy about that one. Like it said, oh, you were trained in magic, you got a partial success. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, so you still fail. Like, as far as I can tell, there's no difference between a partial success and outright failure. Also, if the main protagonist succeeds, fails to do things, it affects her mood. And there's not really a way to tell how her mood is going to be affected whether she succeeds or fails. Well, at least not until it happens. So I suppose what the game is really going for is that it wants you to save at every opportunity and constantly re-prep yourself. But it's not exactly easy to tell where the story branches and it ends up that you need a different stat. In the end, I wanted to first get to an end with her alive without saving. And then I wanted to explore all of the different options to see how open the story is. There were numerous times where the main protagonist could go marry someone, but I never chose any of them. I mean, she's like 14 or something. I trained her in war, but yeah, bandits. The game is great at building anxiety and the feeling of failure, which sounds like a bad thing, but it is what the main protagonist is going through, and that I think is what the game creators intended. So they did a good job. Anyways, that's a wrap for this game. Consider picking it up instead of buying a choose your own adventure book.